Testing.
Good morning, everybody. It's 9 a.m. I'd like to call the Strategic Planning and Budget Committee meeting for November 18th, 2025 to order. I'll call on Tim Brubaker to conduct the roll call. Tim.
Thank you. Regional Chair Redmond, Councillor Craig. Councillor Erb is running late. Councillor Foxton, I believe, is stuck in traffic still. Councillor Gowing. Chair Harris. Councillor Hunick. All right, well, I can see you, so we're good. Councillor James. Councillor Liggett. Councillor McCabe. Councillor Nowak. Yep. Councillor Rodriguez. Councillor Salonen. Councillor Shantz. Councillor Verbanovich. And Councillor Wolf.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinantan peoples. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Okay, seeing none, folks, at our last meeting, we heard an overview of the context and process for this year's budget. I think we all recognize that this isn't, of course, another easy budget year. Municipalities across Ontario and in fact Canada are facing the same financial pressures, inflation, infrastructure costs, and growing community needs. Because of this, we can't be all things, of course, to all people, and there will be tough choices that we will need to make. Last week, we had the chance to hear directly from residents at budget consultation sessions in Cambridge and Woolwich, and I thank my colleagues that were able to make it out. They shared consistent messages with us about the importance of affordable taxes and balancing that with the services that we rely on. We also talked a lot about the different budget drivers facing our region. Today, we'll take a deep dive into the operating budgets and hear about the efficiency staff have found and the service changes being proposed to achieve a budget under 5%. Later this evening, we will hear directly from the public once more at our first official public input meeting. This will be followed by a deep dive into the capital program. We, of course, will have a long day ahead of us. And so that, I'll turn it over to Acting CAO Matthew Getzky to kick things off. And I will say that we will allow questions at various points throughout, but let's get through some presentations. And because of the changes with eScribe, we'll be going old school today. I'll ask for you to press your green button on your microphone to indicate your request to speak. We'll try to manage through the folks that want to chime in for a second time. We'll have to do that somewhat manually. So bear with us on that front. But again, clicking of the button on your microphone will trigger your request to speak. So with that, Mathieu, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Before we get into the details of the presentation, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the year that we've had that's behind us. So like many municipalities, we've faced a lot of uncertainty, whether it's tariffs and the impacts on the regional economy, shifts in other levels of government that are affecting our funding streams and policies, and rapidly changing local needs, sometimes impacted by other levels of government. I know we'll talk about international students, for example, that had a significant impact on transit. In the midst of all this, the region continues to provide reliable, critical services to residents, and I want to take a moment to recognize your leadership, council's leadership through these challenging times. There's a lot of difficult decisions that were presented to you, and I want to thank you for the course that you've set for the team and the services that we provide. I've had the opportunity to be involved in a number of community conversations around the plan and budget process, and we took away a lot of information back from these moments with community. There isn't always agreement on how we should move forward, what is the level of service we need to provide, what we need to invest in, but the good thing is we care about the same things, and we're able to have good conversations with community about these things that we care about. Like how do we want the community to grow? What is the type of community that we want to leave for the next generation? And what are the public services that community cares about? And what kind of quality and affordability they want for these services? As a council, you have been at the forefront of all this uncertainty and talking every day to constituents. And you gave us a clear guide earlier in the late spring as a starting point for the conversation. And ultimately, this has provided us with a solid foundation to shape the draft proposed budget and council conversations that will come today and in the meetings to come. So maybe just on the next slides on the goals for today. So we have 2 days ahead of us, and focusing on the next slide, just on what we're going to do first. So we'll dive into the operating portion of the 2026 Region of Waterloo Plan and Budget, and we can start the conversation on the capital budget presentation if time allows. So we'll see as the day progresses what we're able to do today. This will be followed by our first strategic plan and budget public input meeting later this evening, starting at 6 p.m. And then tomorrow we'll have more time to talk about the capital program, as well as the presentation from Grand River Conservation Authority at 9 a.m. As you know, today is an opportunity for conversation, deliberation, and your questions. And we'll create, throughout the presentation, there will be some question breaks so you can really go through all the questions that are on your mind. We're not expecting any decisions or motions from council for today. And larger questions that require more work from staff will be held for responses on December 3rd. So Staff will be around here to respond any questions of clarification and things that we're able to get at the tip of our fingers. But any heavier ones will come back to you on December 3rd, which is the date that we set aside for council for follow-ups and response to your requests. Staff will present the details of any significant changes made to the budget, along with service adjustments and capital project reprofilings that have been made in the last 6 months to meet the targets and develop a capital budget that's based on long-term debt sustainability and affordability for the residents. These elements that we'll bring to your attention will help committee members to understand all the adjustments that are required to meet that 5% guideline and the potential impacts on community. In line with committee direction, staff will also present a business case with any budget increases that include increased FTEs. So there's very few of these because the guideline, to meet the 5% guideline, the objective, one of the guidelines was very clearly no service expansions next year. Let's figure out how we can do things better with and maintain, stabilize the levels of services that are there today. So these are the goals for today and tomorrow. In a nutshell, on the next slide, just a reminder of the supporting materials that you've been provided with, and that will use as a reference point throughout the conversation, and that will help you navigate. That will be your reference points as you make decisions and deliberate throughout the process. So we have two presentations for today. The appendix on the annual business plan that tells you a little bit more about the what and how this ties in with the strategic plan that has been directing us for the last 3 years, as well as the business cases that I mentioned and these service adjustments that will be part of an important conversation. You also have the detailed preliminary budget book that was published last week. And alongside this, the user fees and charges report that talks about things from transit fares, rates, and other fees that are incurred by users of some of our services. Next slide, please. So just as we start this the marathon meeting of today and tomorrow, a reminder of the calendar here and the timeline that we're looking at. So today and tomorrow, full days on the presentation of the operating and capital review and GRCA presentation. On the 26th, you will have the police budget presentation. So that's next week. And then council follow-ups will come on December 3rd with a potential carryover in the morning, but that's really up to you. And then final budget day on operating budget and to lock in the operating budget and capital program and the user fees and charges will be on December 16th. Next slide, please. So with that said, we'll get into the bulk of the presentation. We'll start with a brief overview of where we are with respect to the strategic plan, where we are headed, what achievements we've done with the budgets that you've approved in the last few years and that have enabled the work that we do as an organization. Just before we start there, I know, and that was one of the questions that you had asked on October 22nd, just about population growth. So, this is a budget that was built on and towards some growth objectives. And the region's population is still projected to reach 1 million by 2051. So there's always fluctuations in growth. We had extremely high growth a couple of years ago with 4% or over 4%. This has tampered down significantly because of the limited inflow of international students who aren't there to stay in the region further. But on average, the pace of growth is still very significant. And even if it has slowed down, and we expect that trend on international students to continue for a few years, the growth is still sustained. And this has impacted some services more than others. So you'll see throughout the presentation, not all services are equal in front of growth. So we'll see transit has really absorbed a lot of the direct fluctuations of the international student population. Whereas things like water use, for example, are really much steadier and have a much more steady growth rate that is both directed by population growth and the conservation measures that we're supporting. And I'm not talking about we also have growth in the needs of the housing needs. We know that's an acute need of the community. So these needs are growing a little bit more than the growth of the population. So different services have the needs that are associated with different departments are different. And I think some of the work that we've done in this budget has been to tailor, kind of to set the level of service to meet the specific changes in needs for a specific type of service. So we know that other changing needs that typically impact us are aging population. So that changes the basket of services that we're trying to provide. Aging infrastructure. We had the conversation about the asset management plan and how that changes the need to reinvest in infrastructure as it gradually ages. And then we know that health factors, economic factors, environmental factors may also affect some of the needs of community and how and will, I would say, frame how the levels and the types of services that we want to deliver for a community. So we will talk you through some of this context in the next few slides, and we'll have a couple of deep dives at all in certain departments that are specifically affected by this change. So I'll stop there and thank you for your support through the process. And over to you, Rod, to kick us off on the first of the areas of focus of the strategic plan.
Thank you very much, Mathieu. Homes for All is one of our main priorities at the Region of Waterloo. As you can see from this slide, this priority area is at the intersection of a lot of work that we do at the region. It's about keeping people in homes. It's about good jobs. It's about a strong local economy. The services that contribute to this priority include creating affordable housing for our community, homeless services, senior services, employment and income services, operations and growth at our airport, creating opportunities for economic growth and new jobs in other parts of the region, creating opportunity, and just a few facts from the slide on the screen that you have before you here. While the total number of individuals experiencing chronic homelessness has risen in the past year, the number of individuals experiencing any type of homelessness has actually decreased 8% since the anchor investments that were made in the plan to end chronic homelessness in 2024. Through Build Waterloo Region, we continue to advance strategic projects that bring thoughtful mixed-use development forward with additional affordable and attainable housing options and integrated transit options. Think about the Charles Street Terminal here, or the Kitchener Central Transit Hub. And we create employment-ready land for long-term investment. In total, this portfolio in the future is expected to deliver over 16 million square feet of development. At YKF, our aerospace campus continues to attract new investment and employment growth, both with physical development and also supporting talent and skill development through our partners like the Waterloo Institute for Sustainable Aeronautics and the Waterloo Wellington Flight Center and the Accelerator Center Incubator for Aeronautical Enterprises. Most of our recent reports show YKF generates $390 million in total economic output. It has 44 businesses right on the campus and supports 1,360 jobs at the airport. Slide 7, please. Thank you. Moving forward, we will discuss our efforts in supporting employment growth and affordable housing development, including the following actions and investments in 2026. Accelerating new affordable homes, land development for job creation, homes and transit integration, such as the Breslau GO and the KCTH, infrastructure readiness to support major investment, Waterloo Region housing revitalization, enhancing employment supports, planning for the long-term development of YKF as an important engine for our economy, and future planning for senior services and the Sunnyside campus. And
Thanks, Rod. Waterloo Region is located on the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinootan peoples. We are a diverse community with a rich culture. Waterloo Region has always been a great place to live and work and raise a family. And the community continues to evolve and attract people from across Canada and beyond, although the pace of growth has always ebbed and flowed. We know that the current economic climate, coupled with outdated municipal funding tools and provincial and federal funding reductions, are straining services and limiting our ability to meet growing community need. This is also happening while reliance on regional services has increased. Across many of our services, client needs are also becoming more complex, associated with an increasing expectation for regional services to address major health and societal pressures, including mental health and addictions. Given these pressures, the region continues to work creatively to meet community needs within available resources. Children's Services is working with community partners to grow childcare spaces across the region. As of the end of 2024, there were 18,921 Canada-wide early learning childcare spaces for children 0 to 5 years, and 76,889 visits to local early-ons. Since 2022, the Upstream Fund has given out $12.18 million to help 141 community projects improving well-being in Waterloo Region. Through assessments of tens of thousands of student vaccination records, direct communication with parents and caregivers, and many catch-up clinics, student vaccination rates increased from about 81% in October 2024 to over 93% in July 2025, protecting children from many serious diseases. Additionally, paramedic services diligently worked with hospital partners to achieve a 68% decrease in the number of Code Zero events from 2023 to 2024. Today, people lead busier lives than ever before, and making it easier for people to get to work, to access childcare and schools plays an important part in well-being. That's why we are improving transportation networks and making it easier and safer for people to get around through the addition of technology at key intersections. All of these efforts are having tangible, positive impacts on the lives of the residents we serve. Next slide, please. Moving forward, we will continue to address critical community needs, deliver services equitably, and collaborate with partners to effect positive community change. Efforts in 2026 will include the following actions and investments: adding new childcare spaces, improving accessibility and services, piloting rural traffic calming solutions, developing a capital planning prioritization policy to support equitable delivery of the region's capital plan, expanding community paramedicine, improving prenatal and child health outcomes, strengthening collaboration and cultural land stewardship with First Nations, and reopening Dune Heritage Village. Thank you.
Council, Waterloo Region is surrounded by a rich natural environment which we rely on every day. However, as we know, the natural world is under pressure as the climate crisis worsens. In 2024, the region experienced 34 days above 30 degrees Celsius, and the cost and impact of extreme weather is rapidly increasing. While we continue to monitor and respond to incidents and emergencies such as floods, extreme heat and cold, ice storms, and more, extreme weather events also increase our infrastructure degrades faster and it puts pressure and hazards in our emergency response, like snow removal, localized flooding, and downed trees. Investing in resiliency and decarbonization will result in significant long-term savings. For example, in 2025, solar panels across the region generated 1.5 million kilowatt hours of electricity, generating $662,000 in revenue and saving 184 tons of GHG emissions. With the community's collective transportations emitting almost 50% of Waterloo Region's emissions, transportation services provides climate-friendly ways of getting around, including GRT, trails, bike lanes, Neuron e-scooters and e-bikes, and more. Through the end of Q3, GRT has seen 109,000 daily boardings and delivered over 700,000 hours of service. As our community grows, we must also be strategic in stewarding our natural resources. In water and wastewater services, we supply 125 million liters of water and treat 155 million liters of wastewater per day. However, we are seeing a 4% sustained increase in water use across our region attributed to population growth, and we now know that we have 20 years of landfill capacity remaining. Next one, please. Yep. Moving forward, we will continue our efforts in adapting and mitigating climate change, including the following actions and investments in 2026. Continuing to advance the Corporate Climate Action Plan, enhancing the climate resiliency and capital projects through the Climate Adaptation Strategic Plan, planning for our long-term water supply, wastewater treatment, and waste management needs, implementing the GRT business plan and progressing construction on the Kitchener Central Transit Hub, completing the integrated mobility plan to improve our various networks and safety as we travel on them, and developing an urban forestry management plan to nurture and maintain the region's trees and green infrastructure. With that, I'll pass it to Kate.
Investing in people, technology, and a culture of equity and inclusion is essential to creating a resilient, future-ready government that can effectively serve our growing community. We know that municipalities in Ontario and across Canada face significant resource and fiscal challenges as service demands evolve. For example, Region of Waterloo facilities saw an 8% increase in work orders from 2023 to 2024. And average Ontario Works caseloads have increased by 11% since 2024. Existing funding gaps are increasing maintenance, supplies, and construction costs, which are also a challenge for service delivery. Looking forward, significant opportunities exist to mitigate these risks through technology, data utilization, and innovative approaches, and collaboration with community and other levels of government. To help address these pressures, the region is committing to using digital tools to enhance resident service experience and free up staff capacity. There are currently approximately 270 digital services on regional websites, including online applications, request forms, and more. As costs rise for maintenance and supplies, continuing a robust efficiency program is imperative. The 2026 budget identified an additional $4.2 million in efficiency savings, in addition to the $41 million saved over the past several years. Effective services depend on skilled, diverse staff equipped with the necessary tools, and we are prioritizing inclusive hiring, leadership practices, and employee development to support a positive work culture and service improvements that work for everyone. Over to Connie.
As we continue to transform services, support employees, and drive efficiencies, we will keep community needs and input at the heart of our planning through the following investments and actions in 2026. Continuing to implement operational efficiencies, expanding digital services, including the launch of the region's new website, which really serves as the foundation for digital service delivery, modernizing data analytics and technology, supporting employee growth, development, and well-being, embedding reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion into organizational policies, practices, and services, and continued cybersecurity initiatives and contingency planning. We'll now take a pause if there are any questions about the initiatives planned for next year.
And we'll have some starting with Councillor James.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for this introduction and for the work leading up to this. I just have a question of clarification when it comes to some of our housing initiatives. And I know with incentives from, say, federal, provincial governments, does the region qualify for any of those incentives?
Councillor James, I don't profess to be the incentives expert around the horseshoes, so I'll ask Rod to jump in. But I would say the answer is it depends. There are a number of both federal, provincial mechanisms to support our efforts to build more affordable housing, and including the recent announcement from the federal government with a new agency that we're still unpacking what that's going to look like. What I will say is when we're putting all of this together, both on a capital and operating perspective, we don't leave any stones unturned. And if there are programs that we're eligible for, we make sure that we get in line for those. If there's a specific one, I would have to get back to you.
If I might add that in our recent experience, the incentives available have not been able to significantly offset the increase in costs for the delivery of housing. So we've seen ourselves run into real challenges where incentives from CMHC were challenged to make the numbers work.
Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Dr. Wong, a question for you about the community paramedicine program. Could you maybe speak to what the plans are for the year in terms of growing that service, which is provincially funded, and how it interacts with other growth in our other paramedics or our standard paramedic services, and a bit more context on what you look forward to in 26.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Rodriguez. I'm just going to ask clerks if John was able to log on from, no, because of the, okay. So I'll just start. So the community paramedicine program is 100% provincially funded program. And the amounts that they give us are what we're able to work with in order to expand the program. They have provided us with similar funding to what they did in the last few years. And so we're going to be able to continue to try to grow the program slowly. Overall, the budget for the program is relatively small compared to the budget for the land ambulance service. So the response to 911 calls. So it will help in terms of trying to provide care at home to clients who will need to access the emergency or have access to the emergency room more frequently in order to prevent some of these transfers to the emergency department. So it will help reduce some of the frequency of those calls. But at this time, with the current funding that we have, it's not something that can very significantly change the demand on the 911 side of the service, which will still grow in line with the growing and aging population. I can provide you more details once I get John back online.
Great.
Thanks.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Looking at the transportation networks and road safety slide. Okay. All right. And people don't want me to ask this question. It says 540 intersections will have MyoVision cameras. And I was curious how much we're putting in the 2026 budget for MyoVision. And I was concerned at the active transportation meeting, talking to cyclists, that they are not using the MyoVision. Some is because of not knowing it's there. Others that you have to be, if your bike doesn't have enough iron in it, it doesn't register and you have to be right over it. But they all seem to use the button for the pedestrian. So I'm not sure if this would be any kind of major savings if we didn't do that, or anyway. So if you could just give me in the future some numbers and, you know, talk to me about why it should be there, or yeah, we could get rid of that, would be helpful.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Councillor Wolf, thank you for the question. So, Council, reminder of what the MyoVision technology is. These are cameras placed at soon to be all of our regional intersections, and reminder, the region manages on behalf of all lower tier municipalities, all intersections in the region, signalized ones, sorry. And so what MyoVision does is it gives us the ability to monitor those intersections for vehicle, truck, bus, pedestrian, cyclist travel, and will help us as we move into the integrated mobility plan and as every day we manage the network and adapt to construction or changing traffic patterns. Councillor Wolf, the link that you are drawing to cyclists and buttons to cross intersections can be enabled by MyoVision. That is a sensing technology that we can link to it. But I would say if we think about MyoVision, and I will provide the numbers, happy to do that in the coming days. Think about it as a data tool more than one that is actually focused on enabling customer travel. Thank you.
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you very much for the information and the work that was done over the last couple of weeks to, give us a better sense of what's in the budget. I appreciate the extra effort that went into that. I'm curious about the water slide where it said that there's a 4% increase in the use of water or the amount of water being consumed, and that's being driven by growth. Could you just explain to us, is that merely a factor of our growing community or is it also a factor of like our expanding community as well? Or how do those two things go together? And then just maybe kind of give us a sense of what we're doing or what staff's doing to make sure that we do have enough water over the next, 5, 10, 15 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. What we've seen in water services for water consumption is a steady increase of 4% over the last couple of years. We are attributing it to population growth in the region. So previous to that, we'd actually seen our water usage consumption go down through really intensive conservation efforts. And so when we saw this steady rise of a steady sustained rise of 4%, we are attributing it to population growth, which is either intensification or expansion into greenfield areas in the region. So greenfield obviously uses more water. Those single detached homes use more water per capita consumption, and high rises don't use as much water, but we are seeing this steady sustained growth. In terms of what we're doing with it, this information is we're including it in our water supply strategy update that we're currently working on right now, looking at water supply needs to 2051 based off of the planning documents provided by the area municipalities.
Thank you. And can you just remind us as well, the I&I, it's infiltration and I always forget what the other I means.
Inflow.
Inflow, thank you. What percentage of that are we losing through I&I? Or I guess you don't know that because it's lower tier municipalities that do that.
Yes, it is the area municipalities that look after inflow and infiltration because it's primarily part of the sanitary sewer system as groundwater or rainwater, stormwater enters the sanitary sewer system through cracks in pipes or cracks in maintenance holes, chambers and things like that. So we are working with the area municipalities. We've just started a tentative reach out on seeing if there's interest to start a region-wide look at I&I in our system, because every drop of water that enters our sanitary system needs to be treated at our treatment plant. So where we can, and it also takes up capacity for growth. So where we can find capacity for growth in the pipes and in our treatment plants, it helps support growth for the future.
Okay, great. My understanding, I think, just is that there's nearly 10%. Would that be around the number of loss?
So
is it
each,
hi-
yeah, so through the chair, each municipality is different. And through this reach out, we're asking that very question, like what is each municipality experiencing in terms of I&I percent? So we're gathering that information. It's been, as people are very busy, our meetings are not as often as we would like them to be with respect to this, but everyone that we have talked to initially has a program for I&I in terms of finding it and fixing the problem. So we're encouraged to hear that. There's been some very extensive work done in all of the area municipalities with respect to it.
Great, that's good to hear. Can I ask one more question, or I can go back in the
No,
queue?
let's get her, you can go ahead, and then I've got Councillor Craig next.
Okay, thanks for that, Commissioner Rose. That's good to hear, and I'm happy to hear that the area municipalities in the region are working together, because saving that amount of water from leaking out would be a huge cost savings, but also save a lot of time and effort for staff, and treating it, et cetera, because obviously water is one of our key resources. I just wanted to jump back to the MyoVision question, because I'm curious if that MyoVision software or installations, is that also going in where there's pedestrian crossovers? Like there's some that are signalized, most that are not, but does it include going into, I guess, initially the ones that are signalized?
Through your chair, yes. So Councilor McCabe, our approach is to get all of the signalized vehicle intersections completed first, and that's the work that's ongoing. We could at other times expand to,
I mean,
crossings or-
pedestrian crossovers.
Yeah, not included right now in the plan. We could go there next.
Okay, because I was curious about what it would actually cost to signalize all of the pedestrian crossovers across the region. I know we're in a tough budget year, so I wasn't going to table it this year, but just to think about that, because it is when you're crossing 4 lanes of a regional road, either with a bike or with, just walking, it's like taking your life in your own hands to time it properly to get across, 2 lanes, and then you wait for another break in traffic. It really I saw about a 10-year-old kid doing that a couple of weeks ago, and it just, your heart's in your mouth while you watch them try and get across. So I just hope that that's something that we can consider, signalizing all of those pedestrian crossovers, in the not too distant future as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor McCabe actually asked the pertinent question about water loss that I was concerned about. And I think we'll find when we get some better numbers coming back, it's going to be higher than 10%. And it's a significant water loss that we need to be looking at. Just a statement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Question, Councillor Urbanovich.
Thank you very much. Just on this, and will we be getting more into the details of the water rates and the wastewater rates later on?
Yes, it's later in this presentation.
Okay, I'll leave it. I'll leave my question until then. Thanks.
Okay, we have no further questions on this particular series of slides, so we'll move on to our next financial overview.
Thank you, Chair Harris. Now we'll spend some time giving a financial overview of our operating budget for 2026. Next slide. So earlier this year, Council directed staff to prepare the 26 budget with an overall tax levy increase not exceeding 5%, while maintaining essential services and identifying operational efficiencies. Council further directed that the 10-year capital program be developed with an affordability framework. This means aligning with the base operating budget, supporting a sustainable debt level that preserves our AAA credit rating, and grounded in realistic assumptions for development charge collections, grants, and other funding sources. Council also requested that any new FTEs be supported by detailed business cases. I can tell you that Council's direction has guided every budget decision to date and what you see before you today. Next slide. So Council, you've seen this slide before. It sums up the draft budget we provided to you. It focuses on affordability and shows that we found ways to manage and mitigate our costs so that we can maintain service quality without major adjustments. And there's still a focus on making headway on challenges that are top of mind for the community. Next slide. So we've shown this slide on October 22nd to Council, highlighting that this is focused on the 40% slice of the property tax that goes to the region to cover regional services. I wanted to confirm and clarify the second chart. This chart is actually developed by MPAC, and it compares the average 2024 property tax for a two-story home using the base of similar types of services. So for example, the Waterloo number here includes an average of the area municipalities. This chart does not reflect any utility rates or items like water user rates like water as well. And so you can see the region still continues to come in below the average. As we noted previously, this insight from MPAC is developed by BMA Management Consultants. It's an annual municipal comparative survey that we have received since 2016. It won't be updated for 25 until December of this year and won't reflect 26 increases as we are all debating that right now. Staff did some investigation based on some of the questions on October 22nd, and we were able to get some of what was approved in 2025 and proposed for 2026 for some of our comparators, namely Durham, York, London. In general, the region saw a higher increase in 2025 than our competitors, but are in line with most in 2026. Therefore, the limited data available shows we're still trending to be at the low end of our comparators. Next slide. So we showed you this view on October 22nd and walked through the main drivers. And council set that guidance on the operating budget that the tax levy increase year over year should be no more than 5%. And that's what we've put forward here. So as it stands, the proposed budget is a 4.94% increase on regional services. So from left to right, the main drivers are the waste contract continues to phase in. We've been phasing that in over the past 3 years, and it starts in March 2026. The total increase for this contract was 31.8 million. This year, we increased the last 8.2 million, which is about a 1.4% point on the 25 levy. Staff costs account for approximately 34% of the region's annual operating budgets. We continue to follow HR policies that target 50% percentile on compensation. The cost portion includes cost increases on existing benefits, which is a challenge for many businesses and organizations. As well, you're aware in 25, we've seen a deficit mainly due to lower revenue in transit, airport, and POA revenues. These pressures added about 7 million or 1.2%. Debt related to 25 and funding reserves for our pay-to-go policy is approximately 8 million or 1.4%. Despite all these pressures throughout this budget, we were able to prioritize funding for the reopening of Dune Heritage and annualizing all the great choices council made in 25 budget process, like the paramedic service expansion. The offset to these pressures comes through management actions around efficiencies and some proposed service adjustments. Efficiencies, which we define as cost savings that do not have an impact on residents or staff experience, of 4.2 million were found this year. Adjustments fall into either right-sizing services to demand, doing more with less, or optimizing financial levers, totaling approximately 8.3 million, which we will walk through these later today. Next slide. So the next slide shows regional assessment growth over the last 10 years. And I want to take a moment to explain what assessment growth means. So assessment growth is essentially a measure of how much our region has grown at this point in time. How many more residents, homes, or businesses that are contributing to the overall property tax requirement. So it's essentially thinking that the number of people or the number of businesses has expanded, so there's more ratepayers and taxpayers that are contributing to the base costs. This slide shows how much of our assessment base has increased year over year as provided by MPACT. As of October 14th, MPACT's current estimate for 26 assessment growth is 1.12%. In our preliminary plan, we've rounded that to 1.15%. This is lower than we expected, we experienced in the past. The main reason is the slowdown in development, which you've seen reflected in our RDC collections and broader economic indicators. And MPACT will finalize this 26 assessment growth number before we finalize the budget. So in December, we'll bring that updated final number, and that'll get incorporated into the budget. So if that assessment goes up, that will help to lower the overall rate we're looking at right now. Okay, next slide. Next, I'd like to demonstrate for Council how the budget unwound this year in terms of service level impacts. So as we discussed on the 22nd, we used a very rigorous budget process. We took a strategic organizational-wide look at where we're spending money, and we asked every division across the region to explore what it would mean to reach a 3% level. This helped us to identify service adjustments that would have the least impact on the community. When we looked at the drivers, we didn't have a lot of room to advance critical support services to the same levels. This means that in 26, these support areas will actually have fewer available resources than they did in 2025. Because of this constraint, we slowed the pace, which comes with some risk, as we will not have capacity to move forward on some critical investments like digital service transformation, workforce modernization, talent and capability development, finance modernization, and other corporate readiness initiatives. In addition, part of the direction this year was no service expansions across the organization. We are not adding new services or mandates. We are focusing on delivering what we already do as effectively as possible with the resources we have. And there are included in the package of, I think, 3 that are service related with the appropriate business cases attached. On the right-hand chart, you will see the output of this work. Community services grew by 8% or 13 million, almost entirely driven by the housing portfolio. In public health and paramedics, growth was 5.1%, mainly due to the annualization of the 25 paramedic expansion. Engineering and environmental services ended at 8.9%, largely due to the impact of the new waste collection contract. In transportation, we're carrying the impacts of this year's ridership decline, which we discussed during the Q3 report. And as a reminder, as ridership goes down, we face a double revenue impact. We lose our transit revenue, and we also lose provincial funding, which is tied to those ridership levels. So that pressure flows directly into the 26 budget. Planning and development and legislative services shows a growth rate of 10%, but this doesn't tell the whole story. About 2 million of the increase is related to the decrease in revenue, which is entirely outside of our control. We don't set ticket volumes or the fine rates. Another 800,000 is related to the Dune Heritage reopening. If you remove those 2 items, PDLS would be classified as a support service with slow growth coming in under 1%. Now I'm going to pass it over to Nicole to go over the next slide.
Thank you, Wayne, and good morning, Council. On this slide, you can see a breakdown of our funding strategy, our funding sources, as well as our categories of spend. We have presented a preliminary budget with 1.5 billion in net expenditures for the regional Waterloo, as shown on the left side of the slide. 43% of that is coming from property taxes. 22% of that is coming from user rates, fees, and other charges. Together, those two categories represent what regional residents directly contribute. You could also see that provincial grants account for about 32% of our funding and federal grants only about 1%. So a very significant portion of our funding comes from the province with a comparatively small amount from federal. On the right side, we looked at a subtotal of our operating expenses and wanted to share with council, how do we actually spend our money? So as I mentioned on October 22nd, people costs, salaries, wages, benefits are about 34% of our budget. Grants and benefits, things like Ontario Works, housing subsidies, childcare supports are 36. That's the biggest category. And it reflects that we directly reinvest right into our community. The next category is called contracted support at 15%. This includes external companies that we hire to work on things like security, consulting, master plan engagements, specialized services, and et cetera. Our facilities related costs, everything required to operate and maintain our regional buildings, is 11% of our spend this year. And the final category, run the business items, things like supplies, equipment, printed paper, postage, all of that basic operational needs represents the final 9%. The biggest takeaway I wanted to point out here is that the vast majority of our spending flows directly into community services or into the people who are delivering those services to the community. Our budget is overwhelmingly oriented towards supporting residents as directly as possible. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, federal grants and subsidies are a significant portion of our budget, about 30% of our budget revenues, expected in the 2026 plan at 497 million, which is an increase of 23 million from 2025. This table is attempting to show the main programs that receive funding from other levels of government, how those amounts have changed year over year, and a bit of context on how the funding works. I will just highlight a few items to bring to council's attention. In Ontario Works and allowances and benefits, we've seen the most significant increase in funding year over year. This is due to how the funding mechanism works. It is tied directly to our caseload totals. Our caseloads continue to trend higher than budgeted in 2025, currently at a record high of approximately 11,000 cases a month. This is forecasted to continue to increase. I'll also call out a funding increase in paramedic services. This is due to the expansion of paramedic staffing approved in the 2025 budget. This program uses a cost sharing model, which is mainly 50-50 cost sharing. And as we discussed a little earlier, the province pays 100% for the community paramedicine program, which was just made permanent recently, as Shuli mentioned. You will see a decrease overall in public health funding year over year. However, this is not impacting our activities. This is mainly due to the closure of the consumption and treatment site services, which was 100% funded last year. This site was shut down on March 31st, 2025. So with that closure, the funding is then removed from our base. Also included in other in this slide, I wanted to call out is the immigration partnership. I wanted to bring to council's attention, there was an expansion approved in 2025 contingent on the Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada funding proposal that was in progress at the time. Unfortunately, the region proposal was not selected to proceed, so the IRCC annual funding amount also decreased from prior year. Budget has been adjusted to align with the program's new funding parameters, and the total region investment in the immigration partnership remains a 50,000 from the levy. If you go to the next slide, please. We showed this slide on October 22nd. What this slide is showing us is the percentage of work the region is taking on continues to grow. In 2019, our budget was for 104 million for these programs and offerings that are cost shared with other levels of government. By 2025, our contribution had doubled to 211 million. In this year, 2026, the preliminary estimate is 227 million, which is a growth of 7% year over year. The main drivers of this growth include housing and homelessness. Council has correctly identified that the community impact and has prioritized housing and homelessness in our Growing with Care strategic plan. However, provincial funding has not followed at the level we would like. Also in paramedics, another main driver through this term of council, we've done some great work to right size the paramedic services and bring response times into the target range. This great work shows in this increase because the paramedics are only 50% ministry funded. Our piece shows here as well. I would also use this chart just to point out one of the many staff found efficiencies. Ontario Works that we just talked about has an increase in caseload, and yet the funding from the levy has gone down since 2024. This decrease in this year, 2026, is mainly due to the result to the Canadian Dental Care Plan, which is now providing dental services to OW clients, which has reduce the need for the regional levy to participate in contributing dental benefits to our OW clients. So it's a win for us, the region financially, but it also provides a higher level of dental care to all of our clients, which is what we want. If you go to the next slide, please, I'll turn to Kate to cover the FTEs.
As Nicole previously said, the majority of our spending flows directly into community services, but this cannot happen without investing in the people who deliver them. This slide shows the full-time equivalents, FTEs, that we are proposing for 2026 as part of the budget. As a reminder, one FTE is equivalent to a standard work contract and does not equate to a number of people. So a part-time person working 1 day a week, for example, would be 1/5 of an FTE. Overall, we are proposing a year-over-year decrease of 11 FTEs. This reduction is driven primarily by efficiency measures and adjustments based on service needs. There are some offsetting increases due to prior council approvals for new roles. As part of implementing the WAIS contract in 2026, there are 18 temporary FTEs being added and removed within the same year. For the reopening of Dune Heritage Village, we are adding 8 FTEs, the same staffing level that existed at the time of its closure. We've also made an administrative update to include all student roles funded through the budget in the formal FTE count. This does not represent new spending or any change in how we operate. These roles have always existed. This update is simply about enhancing transparency and accuracy, and it reinforces our commitment to offering students meaningful opportunities and building a future workforce pipeline. When it comes to students in 2025, we have hired 137 positions for at least one term, including positions in every department, of which 20% or 28 people were repeat hires. In total, there are 5 new roles proposed during this budget process, which I'll highlight now. In rapid transit to Cambridge, we're proposing 2 FTEs, a program manager and a coordinator. We will discuss these in more detail tomorrow during the capital presentation. However, the roles are needed to begin advancing the work before the full funding is received to avoid losing momentum on LRT Stage 2. We're proposing 2 FTEs for homeless shelter maintenance. Today, we rely on contracted services for shelter maintenance. By adding 2 internal FTEs, we believe we can provide more reliable service, improve the experience for shelter residents, and reduce costs compared to outsourcing. And finally, 1 FTE for bus fare inspector. This addition aligns with what you will see later in the transit deep dive. This role supports improved fare compliance, customer experience, and transit system consistency. A business case is also included in Appendix A to the main budget report on today's agenda for these roles. Now we'll turn back to Nicole. The next slide, please.
Thank you, Kate. Earlier, I mentioned that our user rates and revenue account for about 22% of the funding in our operating budget. On this slide, you can now see how that 22% breaks down across the different types of user fees that we charge. Water and wastewater continue to be the biggest driver, followed closely by transit revenue. I do want to draw council's attention to one item on this slide, the municipal speed camera program. The legislative announcement to end the program came after our preliminary plan was finalized and prepared for publication. On December 3rd, we will bring forward an update to council outlining how the closure of the program will impact the 2026 budget. Just as a reminder, this program has no impact on the tax levy, and we do not expect the wind down to change that. This program has always been self-funded, and we will anticipate that we will close it out the same way. If you go to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, water and wastewater continues to be our two largest sources of non-tax revenue. Because of that, and because these services are essential, we provide rate information a full year in advance so users and municipalities can plan appropriately. Staff are proposing to maintain the rates previously communicated in the 2025 budget, effective January 1st, 2026, that include a wholesale water supply rate increase of 5.9%, a wastewater treatment increase of 5.9%, and for retail customers in Wellesley and North Dumfries, the water distribution rate increase is recommended at 3.9%, and the wastewater collection increase at 4.9%. Again, these are fully consistent with projections we provided during the 2025 budget cycle. We will be going into a full deep dive on our water and wastewater services a little later today, including about where we'll talk more about the infrastructure adjustments or infrastructure investments, asset needs, long-term maintenance, and affordability planning that are going into and justifying these rates. Future year projections on these rates are also included in the appendix to the presentation. If you go to the next slide, please. Next, I just wanted to revisit for council our contingency reserves, which help us manage and smooth tax rate increases for residents. This reserve is critical because it allows us to ensure one-time items don't impact the tax levy. It allows us to phase in the operating impacts of any service changes, and it helps us mitigate tax impacts from unforeseen operating events. This reserve, starting at the beginning of 2025, has a balance of 11.4 million. In last year's budget, council committed 2.5 million from this reserve to support the paramedics expansion and smooth that into our operating expenses. The 2026 preliminary budget, further 2.2 million has been allocated to the same event. The reason that we do this is because new paramedic investments takes a year for the province to fund their 50% share. So we need to cover that first year 50% provincial portion ourselves, and then they pick up their share the following year. We also use this reserve in 2025 for a few smaller items in employment services and licensing and enforcement services. The other use of this reserve, as I noted, is to cover any unforeseen operating events. In 2025, we are forecasting a deficit of 3.8 million, as noted in our Q3 financial update. This amount will be drawn from this reserve. After accounting for these committed items that we know about, the closing balance projected for the tax stabilization reserve at the end of 2026, assuming no surplus or deficit in 2026, is 2.9 million. A balance of 2.9 million is extremely low for our contingency reserve. As I mentioned in my reserve report in September, the general best practice in the municipal industry is to have 3 to 5% of your operating budget for available as contingency. At 2.9 million, we would be sitting at about 0.5%, well below best practice and well below a level considered healthy for a municipality of our size. As I covered in our reserve health report, the funding approach for this contingency is being analyzed next year with our infrastructure financing. Next slide, please. I believe I will be turning it over to the chair to take overview questions on what we've just covered.
Correct. And we do have a start of the speakers list on questions. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Neal, for this report. I just want to go back to the slide with the pie chart, the 36% portion, which I think applies to OW and ODSP. 36% sounds like it could be a rather large burden for the community. So I just want to clarify, again, I think you mentioned this in passing, but is this provincially funded or levy funded, excuse me?
Through you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hunick, for your question. As I mentioned in the breakdown of all the different federally or provincially funded programs, OW in particular, we get a funding per caseload. The region has a discretionary benefit that we provide on top of that to maintain a level of service that council has dictated. So included in that 36% that we give out as grants includes both the provincial money that we're flowing through and the amounts that we are topping up.
Okay, thank you. The caseload of 11,000 sounds like a lot for the community. So I just want the community to know that it is provincial funding that we receive for that. Thank you very much.
Councillor James.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Chair. I just have a question around the regional assessment growth, what seems incredibly low, especially when you look at previous years. And I'm just wondering, just for my awareness and I guess the public, how does it work when we have units that are being approved to be built in like the backyards of people's homes, those kind of those units? Is that assessed, or is it because MPAC hasn't done reassessments, is that factored in at all when we think about assessment growth?
So through you, Chair. So our regional assessment growth figures in the budget are lower than previous years. This is reflecting lower development that we've seen all along. That number is provided by MPAC. There's been no staff interpretation of that number. They have told us what to expect, and that is what's included right now. For your second part of your question, talking about backyard units and other developments. So what happens when a building permit is issued, MPAC does an assessment of that new building. So whether that is a backyard unit or a brand new build, they're looking at that outside of the general just updates. We call those, as they come in during the year, supplemental taxes. So those are tax revenues we weren't expecting to get in our budget. And then that goes into our tax base the following year. So whatever we know of at the time then the assessment growth is finalized in December, that will be included in our assessment growth, and anything that happens between that number and the next year's that number comes in as a supplemental tax before being added to the roll.
Okay, so there's kind of that year delay, I guess. And in the meantime, then residents are supplementing the costs for any additional services provided. Like, how does that, so if I build a home in my backyard, am I then, I'm waiting a year to get reassessed for that? Like, and just with some of these new initiatives, I'm conscious of how that is a delay in process in terms of our asset growth and revenue for, and even just on the tax base and pressures. Is there a supplement happening in the meantime?
Yeah, through the chair, and thank you, Councillor James, for that question. Just to clarify completely, as the new dwelling comes online, there's an effective date of that dwelling. They pay our property taxes at the assessed value for that property as of the date that they come online. So they are paying for services as of the date that that new unit is available, let's say. So that there is some timing of the cash flow of when that happens, but they are participating and paying for the services from the date of occupancy.
Okay. So, but ultimately that is neutral for our assessment growth, because you may have a family, I have a family of 3, but then we build something in our backyard and there's a family of 3 or 4 that may move in, or additional 2. I'm just looking at it from that perspective too. And that's all factored in as well. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Rabinovich.
Thanks very much, Chair Harris, and thank you to staff for the overall presentation and bringing a report back that reflects the 5% direction from council as a starting point for this budget. When I look at the slide that talked about cost shared programs, it looked at 2019, 23, 24, 25, and 26. From a broader perspective, and I guess in particular, I think of the budget book and the operating budget book, would it actually be feasible, for example, for staff to provide us those numbers in the context of each of the departmental and divisional budgets in terms of 29 and maybe 23, 25, and 26. Is that information that you could pull out just so that we see what the growth or the decrease has been in different areas between now and budget day?
Through you, Chair, I think that that's a great item we could look at for a December 3rd comeback. And maybe I could work with you on a break just to make sure that I fully understand exactly what information you're looking for there. At the end of the day, just to call out a procedural point for council, we will kind of revisit all the items we flagged for a December 3rd follow-up. So that'll be the first one we're adding to the list. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then I guess the second question, just in terms of overall and where obviously between now and budget day we may be going. Can staff just remind all of us 1% in operating is what? And then also, if we were to make any adjustments in capital, they would need to be made over to get us the same 1%. It would need to be made over 10 years, or that amount is really only 1/10 of an amount in 2026. Is that correct?
So through you, Chair, thank you very much for the question, Councillor Verbonovec. As a reminder to all council, 1% of our 2026 operating budget for regional services is 5.8 million after assessment growth of 1.15%. So that is the current number we are working with on operating. On capital, when we do our deep dive tomorrow, we'll go over kind of how capital integrates to operating in two different ways. The comment I'll make for today is the impact on our levy, 5%, is only how much funding we are putting from our levy right into our reserves, which what is represented in the budget today is as per our existing policy of funding our pay-as-you-go strategy. So if council would like to change any direction of how much funding is flowing into our reserves, that is their prerogative. We'll definitely get into that tomorrow. The only other way that capital impacts our operating is as buildings are coming online and as we are opening new services that we've integrated into our 5% increase. So.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Thank you for that. Because I said this when we were giving that 5% direction. Certainly, as we go through the next few budget days, it's certainly my hope that we may find a path to get closer to inflation. I know that these are really challenging times for affordability for people, and certainly that's a lens that I'll be looking at and asking questions about as we continue going forward. Thank you.
Good questions. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. Just a quick question around the cost of our transportation program, like just roads and things like that. What's the overall amount that we spend on roads? And, and the servicing of them, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, through your chair. So net expenditure for 2026, Councillor McCabe, is 78.5 million. Of that, we will recover about 5.7 million. So you're netting out at about $70 million for all of the road activities. That's maintenance, line painting, cleaning, all of that, including our contracts with the area municipal partners.
Okay. And when you say netting out, like we're not making any revenue from our roads.
Correct. Yeah. So netting out would be the net levy impact of that would be just over $70 million. Yes. We have some revenue generating activities in terms of permitting and some others, but they're pretty minimal in terms of cost recovery. You'd be at about 7% of the overall expenditure. So it's not a significant piece.
Okay. I just wanted to point that out, partly like for myself, obviously, but just for, the rest of council and anyone listening. And look, I know roads are important and we need to move people around and people and goods and that around our community. But I'm also just a bit concerned, as I've said before, about, roads are a service that we need to provide and we need to clean them and all that. GRT is also a really critical service that we need to provide for a lot of people, particularly people who are on, and sometimes the lower income level. And we know we all are very cognizant of the fact that there's an affordability challenge for people. So I just wanted to put that out as a note for us to consider, to continue to think about, because I'm a little concerned about constantly hearing about how much GRT costs. GRT does cost us. It's a critical public service. And yes, our revenues are down somewhat. Over the past 6 or 7 years, though, ridership has still increased. But we still expect revenue from them, which we do generate. It is down a bit. But we also spend far more on our roads, and we don't expect revenue back from that. Or as you just described, we get a little bit from permitting. So I just want us to keep that in mind as we think about balance in our community and public services that people, particularly on the lower income level, need and expect from us. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. On the tax stabilization reserve, I realize 2.9 is extremely low, but that's without year-end surpluses. Are we expecting any year-end surpluses?
Through you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Wolf. As of our Q3 forecast, we are projecting a 3.8 million deficit in 2025, which is factored into that 2.9 million closing for 2026. As of right now, we expect that our 2026 budget that we are putting forward right now is our best foot forward. So we're not projecting any surpluses or deficits for next year. Thank you.
Okay, so for next year. So are there surpluses in 2025 that would go into this?
Yeah, through
But it's a deficit.
through the chair, we did a Q3 report recently, and that's where we projected a deficit for the end of 2025.
Okay.
That's incorporated into the slide. So we're going to project a deficit. That's going to bring us to that predicted closing balance of 2.9 million.
Okay, so no surpluses to look forward to.
Unless there's a surprise somewhere, but no.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gowing.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to piggyback off Councillor James for a second here. So we're talking about the MPAC. In my full-time job, I know that I work with MPAC a little bit. And one of the things that they're saying is they're really extremely far behind on assessments for housing and stuff. My question to that is, do we know sorry, I'm just trying to find the slide here. On the regional assessment growth, I know we're predicting and we're only using MPAC's 1.12%. However, can we look at what the previous years, what they said it was going to be compared to what the final was, so that we can actually have a rough number? And because that 1.12 is extremely low.
So through the chair, the 1.12% as of October is the actual result number. So that is a real number. It is down from prior years. In most years, it is the projection that they give us in October. It just depends on what they get to as far as assessments in the last couple of months of the year as to where that goes. So if they assess a big facility and that ends up on the tax roll, that could be a benefit to us. If they don't have any more kind of big assessments, that's where we'll be. The assessment growth is not something within our control. So I can absolutely pull some history and see how far off we have been. However, I believe by the time I get that research done, we will have a real number. So I would like to suggest that we bring that updated actual forecast forward in December, the best possible foot forward that we will know. Thank you.
Okay, and then just for future, if we could look at that before the 1.15 estimate comes forward, just so that we can have, again, a forecasted number that is based on previous year's differences, if that makes sense. If I can have one more question quickly. On the Dune Heritage reopening, I am 100% in favor of that. However, I'm looking at the 800,000. Can you kind of go through what that is? Because from what I have heard, it's a little high. Is that staffing wages as well as the opening, or what is that?
Through you, Chair Harris, this is primarily staffing. There are some minor operating costs that are associated with reopening, increased utilities, maintenance, and that sort of thing. We also and communications. I would say we have the staffing is primarily part-time employees. So these would be student employees who would be working. We historically had about 18, 19 students that animated the village over the course of the summer. I think it runs. I mean, the peak season is obviously May, June, July, August, September. And it includes one supervisor for the team that is responsible for the village as a whole. So it's 8 FTEs in total, but it breaks down to about 19 people in actual bodies.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and good question on the assessment growth. I think we all can attest that building activity is down significantly in comparison to perhaps over the last 5 years. And so, having a very conservative number or low number instead of an inflated higher one based on an average is probably the better way to go, so that there's no potential shortfall coming from just simply assessment growth. So I know you guys have it under control, and I know Wayne was itching to get in on that as well, but I know that was answered good. So moving on, Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, as we go along in this process, where is the opportunity to make suggestions to lower the budget or to ask staff to come back with a lower percentage? Because I'm sort of following in the same vein as my friend, Councillor Ivanovich, with regards to what's happening.
Great question, Councillor. There will be that opportunity. December 10th are when the council-led motions would be due to the clerk's office.
Well, could I ask then for staff to look at a lower percentage? I mean, I want to give them some leeway as opposed to just simply saying, I think you said December the 11th, 10th. Come back the next day.
The 10th.
I mean,
the 10th, not the 11th. The 11th.
Pardon me, the 10th. Then.
Yeah. Maybe, wait.
I'm just asking, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, through the chair, if council would like us to provide some options on how to lower that, with that direction, we could work on something for later in the budget process on December 3rd or at the final budget process dates.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, then what I would like to do at the appropriate time is to ask staff to come back and look at something under the 3% mark. Okay. And
Okay.
I have reasons for this.
All right.
If I may, if you give me just a bit of time here. We talk about affordability, but we don't have a balance here with regards to all the budget items, all the increases, all the things we're providing, then balancing that off with the community with regards to affordability. We're not really getting into that. And I just put some quick notes together, if I may, Mr. Chair, to emphasize the point.
Yep.
To emphasize the point that affordability, as we all know, is a huge issue. But what is it? What's the context? What's the impact? And I think we need to have, at some point, before we make final decisions, I would like a short presentation from staff on regards to the affordability issues in the region of Waterloo, what taxpayers are facing. And that then gives balance to what we're trying to do or to our propensity to move ahead and perhaps reduce the budget. I just want to give you just a few examples. 38% living in housing that is unaffordable. That's what's going on right now with regards to people out there who are spending more than they're in, 30% increase of their income on housing. 75% of people, housing is out of reach. Waterloo Region is noted as one of the most expensive places in Canada to rent. Living wage is $23 an hour, but the minimum wage is far below that with regards to people. 62% of the population feel that the cost of living is way too high and are having a difficult time. 1 in 8 households, 12.5%, are struggling to afford food, up from 1 in 10 a year ago. Those in the unemployed, 11% are still seeking, those employed are 11% are still seeking food security. 19% of households in food assistance, but with food still, for most of them, unaffordable. The main groups being hit are millennials, seniors, renters, marginalized groups. And I think it's important that we understand that. And out of all of that, food insecurity is up from last year, 15% increase. And I think these are the aspects I think we need to have an understanding of when we set the budget. So what I'm asking, Mr. Chair, if we may have, and this is not a criticism whatsoever of staff or leadership at the staff level. It's a matter of putting a balance into how we look at this. And so I'm asking if we can have that and the appropriate time for me to make any recommendations, but I'll leave that to a later time. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
well, thank you, Councillor Craig. I guess I'll first start by saying, obviously, staff over the course of the summer have responded to council's initial request to come back with a budget under 5%. You have seen that work over the course of the summer today delivered to achieve that number. However, you have an additional ask that is going to require likely some significant staff time in order to facilitate that. And perhaps I'll ask our CFO, Wayne Steffler, to comment on that ability. But I think what we'll do today is get that actually on the floor for council's, thoughts, because it is going to require, I think, a council direction to staff should we be able to get there. So perhaps, but we're gonna do that today. We're gonna need to get that. So maybe over the course of the next little bit, if you want to draw something up, pass it over to the clerk staff to draw it up. A motion will need to come forward. But with that, I think it's appropriate that maybe Wayne or even Mathieu want to comment on Councillor Craig's request and go from there.
Yeah, through the chair. So earlier in the presentation, you recall I mentioned where we gave a target of 3% to staff. So that was intentional because we knew we would get certain things that were maybe not feasible or were significant service adjustments. So we would need a specific target if that's council's wishes to do this process. And we would be looking at those other adjustments. And based on that, we'd have to look at additional service adjustments. So we would have to go through that process and bring those service adjustments forward for consideration.
Does that clarify things for you, Councillor Craig? Oh, sorry, Mathieu, I'm sorry.
No, through you, Chair. I think the more specific the motion can be, the better, because we've done 5 months of work towards the 5% target. So again, we have some ideas, because this is not the be all end all. So we have some ideas on how to reduce the pressure on the tax levy a little bit further. But I mean, the more specific you can be in what services you would like or what expenditures you would like to see reduced, the better, because that gives us a bit of scope. And this is just being aware that we only have a limited time to do the work now. We want to make sure we're prioritizing. There may be the need to the question of how we engage with community and how community gets aware of this is important as well. I think, yeah, just a recommendation, it would be easier for staff if you're more specific. The more specific the motion might be.
When we first set out on this journey, we just simply said 5%. And we weren't asked to give the specifics. Okay? So I'm asking the same thing. I'm looking at 3%. And I'd like to leave the motion at that and leave it up to staff to come back to the best they can do within the time period to bring it down.
Okay, so we know we have that. We'll deal with that at some point today. I do want to continue on with the speakers list if you're okay with that. Yeah, we're going to get to it. Councillor Stellman.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I would definitely need to agree with Councillor Craig on looking to come in still lower. I really appreciate the work that staff have done. I also really appreciated the pre-budget meetings that you held with us, not in quorum. That was really helpful. But yes, continuing to look at inflation as well as other pressures and affordability, I would really be interested in looking at what a kind of skeleton budget without increasing services would look like, as that sometimes, unfortunately, is the reality that we're in, and our taxpayers continue to need to be able to afford what they are paying for. But my actual question was going back to Dune Heritage, picking up on Councillor Gowing's comments. I guess I'm just curious, because it was closed, not permanently, but it was closed for upgrades and capital upgrades. Why was it ever removed from the operating budget? Like, why is it now being put back in to have staff on board? And it looks like it's new programming, even though it was just closed for capital over the summer for a few years.
Go ahead. No, that's okay. Through you, Chair Harris, I think the reason that the costs for Dune Heritage Village were removed from the budget were for transparency purposes. Those funds were not needed to operate the village during the capital upgrade, and so a decision was made to temporarily remove those costs from the budget. Council will recall that we've had a few years of difficult or challenging budgets, and the budget that we put forward and was approved simply had the cost for those staff and those operating requirements removed. They're being brought forward now because they're required to operate the village. I'm not sure if I have got more detail than that to offer. It was a judgment call in a difficult budget situation.
Okay, Councillor James.
All right, thank you, through you, Chair. And I just to comment briefly on what Councillor Craig was saying, I can appreciate coming out at a lower tax rate. I also know that we have other taxes to incorporate, like the police budget and other items. So I think we need to stay open to, where we can cut from as we go through this process. I do have a question for staff regarding the student hires. So I was very happy to see that. I think it was 137 positions, considering right now we know youth unemployment rate is at 14.1%. That's lower than pre-pandemic, and also lower than older workers. So it's something quite concerning. I do want clarification though, just in terms of that's funded through the levies, their federal programs. How is that when we look at, co-op placements and, what age, is it the 14 to 24? How is that kind of broken down in funding for those positions?
Through the chair, I can speak to the age piece, and then I'll hand it over to Nicole for the other piece. So this would be for university or college age students for the time that they're enrolled in their programs.
And then through you, Chair, from a funding perspective, it depends on which program area they're working in. So wherever the student role is hired, however that program is funded, that would be how the student role is funded. So if they're working in the water, for example, they'll be funded by rates. If they're working in finance, they'll be funded by the levy. If they're working in community services, they might be funded by one of those provincially funded programs.
Still, okay. Okay, thank you for the clarification, because I was wondering that, like, if, some of it was provincially funded or what have you. But I think that's excellent to be, to continue on with the hiring of students, especially those that are in university in particular. And I know there are summer programs for younger youth at area municipalities and such. So just supportive of that and happy to see that in there.
Okay, Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to note that I find the 3% guideline to be entirely unfair to staff at this time. The guideline we set for them was 5%, and as was mentioned in the education sessions that Council received, we were told how difficult that was. If we cut services even further, we're only going to marginalize and harm the people in the margins even further. So I will not be supporting this, and I would encourage Council colleagues to not encourage it either. I think it is a waste of staff, resources, and time. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to deal with the likely motion brought forward by Councillor Craig at a later time. We're going to get through our presentation here first. So I just ask that colleagues, if you've got questions, let's stick to the presentation so we can continue on with that. And I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to debate the motion when it comes at a later point. Sorry, Mr. Rodriguez, thank you. So I'll go to Chair Redmond.
Thank you. I will take under advisement your caution, Chair Harris. I just want to sort of tag on to a couple of the themes that have already been talked about. And as we go forward, I think that we have all been made aware that there will be significant impacts to service. Those are things that people around this horseshoe need to make. And I know that I have colleagues around this horseshoe that are also looking at additions that they would like to see happen in 2026 budget. So I do believe that it is, I caution that I think that decision-making resides with us. I totally get Councillor Craig's and Ravanovich's caution that these are tough times for individuals, but the region itself is subject to those inflationary costs as well. And I think probably the expenditure at Dune Heritage Crossroads is a really good example of, were we to make a different decision, that would be a cut of service that would impact. It's not the salary as much as the community who looks for that programming that has been suspended. So those kinds of decisions rightfully will be made by this council because it will impact the people we represent and the services we provide. And again, it would have to be a council motion because it's a lot of work. I think that decision-making resides with us. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Gowing.
Wait for the red. I just want to kind of touch on that. More so with the Dune Village, it was more of, I know that's a revenue generator for us, and I am really keen on finding more revenue generating initiatives. So if there is any others that haven't been explored, or I know we're still going through the process, but I'm 100% on board with the Dune opening. I wish it opened a while ago, because I know that is a revenue generator for us. So anywhere that we can generate revenue, I'm 100% for it.
Turn that back over to staff for the next portion of the presentation.
Great, thank you. And through the chair, we'll now talk about service efficiencies and adjustments that are in the proposed budget. And with residents in mind, this year's budget has been especially focused on affordability. Staff have worked through a robust and diligent business planning and budgeting process to develop a preliminary 2026 plan and budget that achieves the 5% guideline. We don't just look at efficiencies once a year. It's an effort that continues year-round, every single day. Specific to this budget process and the 5% target, staff looked strategically across the organization for ways to find efficiencies and adjustments, and will now focus on the strategies that helped us to meet that target. The region's plan and budget process begins very early in the year. Each regional division works to review their budget line by line, identifying efficiencies and options to meet the guideline. As Wayne mentioned, each department was asked to consider what a potential 3% target would look like for their services, and this gave us a really solid starting point. Following significant assessment against criteria that I'll touch on in a moment, we identified the following 3 categories of service adjustments. 1, working differently to achieve a similar outcome. 2, adjusting service to reflect current resident demand. And 3, leveraging financial strategies. These adjustments totaled an overall savings of $12.5 million to the organization. Next slide. So in looking at service level adjustments, we had a very deliberate framework to help guide decisions on what would be put forward within the budget. This enabled us to compare items from different departments together and to prioritize service adjustments. The criteria that we used for assessing adjustments were strategic impact. So what impact would this adjustment have on progressing Council's Growing with Care strategic plan? Community and resident impact. So what impact would the decision have on residents and those we serve? Organizational impact. What impact would the decision have on the organization's ability to function, its critical resources, and ability to deliver services to residents? Legislative and regulatory impact. So we looked at, is this something that we are mandated or legislated to do? And would a reduction result in failing to meet a legislated standard or requirement? And finally, would the reduction result in a negative financial consequence that would outweigh the dollars saved? Sometimes there are ways to reduce costs in 1 year, but end up increasing costs later on. This criteria was based upon Council's plan and budget principles, centering the needs of residents and the community as a whole. I'll now pass it to Commissioner Steffler to take you through the specific adjustments and categories in more detail.
Thank you, Connie. So as you can see from that, this process to get to these efficiencies and service impacts was a very rigorous, intensive, and a long-term process since spring. We started this in spring to get us to this point, to identify these efficiencies that would have limited service impacts, and then others that have different ways, looking at different ways of how we're doing things. So on this first slide, we see a few examples of the efficiencies that have very little to no service impact. They totaled $4.2 million of efficiencies across all areas of the organization. They are a result of a line-by-line review of the budget. Examples in this category include a $950,000 efficiency in wastewater through contract reviews and material chemical resizing. It includes a $243,000 efficiency through contract and license optimization. It includes a $206,000 efficiency through the reallocation of FTEs, right-sizing budget lines, and finding material resource efficiencies. Next slide. In your package, you have Appendix C that details all the proposed adjustments in the preliminary budget. Here's a preview of the working differently and efficiently to achieve a similar outcome. This category saved us $2.3 million, and the items in this appendix include things that maintain the overall service levels or didn't impact service levels significantly. Next slide. Council provided us with direction to find low-risk opportunities to work differently that didn't impact service levels generally or reduce outcomes for residents. These are just some of the examples of how we achieved savings, and the full list is contained in Appendix C, numbers 1 to 12. Examples include vacant positions and services, making operational improvements by adjusting security services to more appropriate levels, and by improving fleet practices, to name a few. Next slide. The second category speaks to right-sizing service levels reflecting demand or changing need. Items contained in this list helped us save $4 million. Adjustments in this category were found using community data or service level data that showed service uptake trends that were slowing or that demand was lower. We also considered if there were reasonable alternatives that existed to meet user needs. These adjustments also create capacity to focus on priority needs. It will be important to continue to review the community and service data to keep track of service needs in these adjustment areas. These are recommendations for 2026 and we'll continue to monitor for 2027 and beyond. Next slide. And these are some examples of where the majority of right-sizing adjustments are being proposed. The Housing Transition Fund is an example of low uptake from residents, but this need might change. In addition, transit and waste have seen changing need, and the full list can be found in Appendix C, lines 13 to 23. My colleagues in waste and transit will present their service adjustments in detail shortly. Next slide. Our final category of cost savings came from leveraging financial strategies. With our new financial leadership team, we took a very diligent and comprehensive approach to reviewing every part of our financial framework. This was about deepening our understanding, strengthening our internal practices, and making sure we're using every tool available to us. This included ensuring that we are fully utilizing all ministry funding, validating that we are capturing every revenue source, reviewing all our assumptions that were with a fine-tooth comb, making sure that the insights we get from our actuals and year-to-date data are fully reflected and integrated into the budget process. By applying these strategies, and thanks to a very strong effort from staff, we were able to identify $2 million in savings in the 26 preliminary budget. Next slide. The biggest savings came from all our provincially funded programs to ensure we are fully maximizing what we're eligible to claim. This included looking at administration cost allowances and areas where claim approach had not been refreshed or revalidated in several years. By updating these and right-sizing our administrative and facility claims to the current state, we identified additional funding for work we were already doing. This simply is ensuring we are receiving the full amount the province has intended for us. The next two items are related to providing affordable housing. We ensured when we are working with partners to deliver affordable housing that the operating support provided is used, and it is used. If it isn't used, it's returned to the region. Historically, these amounts were left with providers for capital support. We also ensured in housing where rents are being paid that the budget reflects the mix and increase, a right sizing or reality integration into the budget. Together, these three financial strategies, maximizing provincial funding, improving housing reconciliations, and updating the housing mix, deliver the $2 million in savings in the budget. Now I'll turn it over to Chair Harris for another question break.
Okay, colleagues, I don't have anybody here that's queued in for a question. So if not, we'll carry on with the presentation. Okay, we'll carry on.
Next one, please, clerks. Council, earlier this year, you approved the GRT business plan, and then we had possibly the most interesting year ever in transit. A federal policy decision, in this case, impacting international students, significantly reduced our ridership, and we had to react. Fortunately, we've become really good at reacting through the last few years as we've had the impacts of the pandemic and some of our largest service decreases into some of our largest service increases, and again into this year. The good news is that we had the business plan and it told us what to do. Continue to prioritize the frequent transit network while we right-size the remainder of the service. The plan in front of you today, admittedly, is not the most exciting transit service plan ever. And I know we have some really passionate customers and supporters, but nor should it be in a year when ridership is down because we work with taxpayer funds. But it does not step away from the business plan. We remain focused on being flexible. As shown this year, we've pivoted and we've got our cost recovery back on track. Diversifying revenues with the launch of GRT Pay and the high school partnership. We are seeing this in action, but we have more work to do on this as we are working on a multi-year fare strategy to share with you in 2026. And finally, making transit an easy choice. Council, we have a great network. It starts with the ION 301, 302 spine. It extends into the frequent transit network and the I-Express routes. And then it's bolstered by all the connecting routes. And I'd be a loss if I also didn't share my excitement about the township's transit strategy, which will come to you on November 2nd at the SID committee. Next slide, please. Council, this year GRT will reduce our spend by approximately $1 million on top of what we achieved this year. We were also anticipating we will recover less at the fare box than we did in 2025 to the tune of $10 million. And so with no general fare increase proposed and to keep the network running at close to current levels, there is a proposed levy increase of about $8.7 million, which includes everything we have done to date in 2025 and $1.37 million proposed for 2026. To give you a quick summary of the business again for Grand River Transit. In 2026, we will spend about $230 million. Of that, we will recover roughly $75 million for a net levy impact of $156 million. The 2026 capital plan for GRT across both bus and LRT is about $92.5 million. And just to summarize our big spends, our biggest spend is people, compensation, and benefits at $104 million. The Grand Link contract at $37 million. And then finally, fuel at $10.5 million. Next slide, please. Now, the question for you, me, and our team is, do we have a better ability to forecast now with the changes? And the simple answer is yes. Continuing to work with our post-secondary partners on their student forecasts, we have been above or at our projected ridership since April of this year. It doesn't mean that the post-secondary institutions are done reacting. It just means that we have a better understanding and the scale of those impacts will be lessened. We also know we need to diversify the ridership base and continue on with the business plan. Next slide, please. Council, let's talk about fares. And a quick reminder that as of right now, 35% of every dollar invested is returned to us through the fare box. We do not have any general fare increases proposed this year to single ride, daily, monthly, or any past products, but we do have 3 fare proposals in front of you. The first one impacts the Mobility Plus taxi coupon, and the proposal is to increase that from $30 to $40 to achieve that $60 in value that a customer can then spend. This program and its value was introduced when we had less capacity on Mobility Plus service. And reminder, in booking of those trips, we try to get people on a Mobility Plus vehicle first, then a taxi that we book, and then as a last resort, we encourage people to use the taxi coupon in which they book with the taxi company directly. Council, with your investments, we've got the undelivered rate for trips under 2.5%. We are in procurement for the software upgrade. Reminder, you had approved first an update, which is complete, and then a upgrade, which is in procurement right now. We are seeking maximum efficiency in the deployment of our vehicles and resources in Mobility Plus. The next proposed fares change is to the 2-ride card, and the proposal is to increase the card from $5 to $6. This would align the value of that card with all of our stored value products, our standard fare, and it also recognizes the administrative effort to run this program closer to cost recovery with lots of learnings from our 2-ride fare card pilot. And finally, a proposed increase from $124.91 to $131.14, which is the 5% allowable increase in our contracts with our UPass partners. Next slide, please. On to service. We've got some really exciting changes on routes 206, 27, 14, and 36. I'll tell you a bit more about those shortly. We've also got the township transit strategy, which is area rated, and so far has the support of 3 of 4 area municipal township councils, and my team is in Woolwich tonight seeking support there. We also have some targeted reductions on routes that are not performing well this year. But council, the real tell for us in this one is the cost recovery rate. So in September of 2023, when service was booming, we were at 49% cost recovery, 49 cents on the dollar. In September of 2024, that moved to 37%. And in August of 2025, that was 22%, tremendous concern for my team. However, in September of 2025, we returned that number to 35% cost recovery. We are back on track in terms of our spend and our service. With that What we're focused on is reducing the burden on taxpayers while keeping the network strong. And we can go into more details now. Next slide, please. Council, the first pack is customer responsive. So this is increases in speed or frequency to the 206 Coronation, which connects Fairway, Cambridge Memorial, and Ainslie, to the 27 Morrison that connects Fairway to the Freeport campus, the 14 Bathurst, which is a loop out of Conestoga Mall up into North Waterloo, and the 36 Thomas Lee, which travels through Southwest Kitchener, connecting to Conestoga Dune and the terminal there. We do have some targeted reductions. The 110 College Express, which we had bolstered and put in at the time of the international student boom in 2023, ridership is down 50% on that route, and Route 10 covers that full extent. So we're not facing a loss of service. In terms of Route 13 and 19, and a reminder, Council, these ones are linked. We interline those services. The 13 Laurelwood, which moves through North Waterloo, and the 19 Hazel, which moves through the middle and some of the student sections. The 19 route is down 17% year over year. So we are seeing some impacts to our post-secondary partners at the universities as well. And the next proposed change in reduction is to the 9 Lakeshore and the 30 Ring Road. So again, the 30 Ring Road carries a small volume of customers, but the 9 Lakeshore is down 11% year over year. With that, Council, a quick summary of the transit budget: no general fare increase, some targeted service increases and reductions, a business that is back on track in terms of ridership and cost recovery, and limited risk to the system, but obviously some limited customer impacts when we talk about fares and service. Thank you, and I'm happy for any questions.
And we will have some. Councillor Hunick.
Want to make sure that council and the community is aware that the taxi coupon program was not only created to augment the capacity of GRT, it was created to allow people with disabilities in our community various transportation options, and it was created to provide baseline guaranteed funding to accessible taxis in our region. We need accessible taxis in our region, more of them, specifically because Uber and Lyft do not offer accessible taxis or accessible vehicles, I should say. There are already many customers of Mobility Plus that cannot use the taxi program because it is beyond their budget at the current discount. If we increase the taxi coupon price, we are only limiting this program further. And I would suggest that while the staff report suggests that we should be encouraging more people to use Mobility Plus, it is still very difficult to get a ride on Mobility Plus between peak hours such as 8 and 10 a.m. when people are going to work. For example, according to Mobility Plus policy, one is only supposed to wait 30 minutes for a ride that they have previously booked. This morning, on the way to the budget meeting, I had to wait almost 40 minutes, and I think this will increase if we further burden the Mobility Plus system with trips because people cannot afford taxi scripts. The question that I would ask, 2 questions. Actually, Commissioner Spooner, would we save as much money in the taxi script program if we reduced the allotment to its original amount of 24 books a year instead of 30? Do you know that, Commissioner Spooner?
Through you, Chair. Council, you've got me stumped. I don't know the answer to that question. I've noted it and happy to answer before we get to final budget day.
Okay, and then my other question, and this has to do with the partnership between taxi licensing and hearing, as well as GRT, is that I know that the money for taxi coupons comes from the accessible funding provided by Uber and Lyft. And so I'm wondering why GRT sets the fee for taxi coupons and why it would be considered GRT revenue. Should that be reframed as well?
Through you, Chair. So, Councillor, all GRT revenue is recognized as regional generalized revenue. It's not a separate line. So I think that's probably why. In terms of why GRT sets the fees and charges is likely, we just have the capacity to administer the program. We've got, folks who mail and who work on that side. So it's likely just it landed in a spot where we've got a customer facing opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's of my opinion that fewer rides at a larger discount is more attainable for folks than more rides at a smaller discount. And so if we could look into the taxi script allotment rather than the taxi script price point would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Spooner, for walking through this. I think one of my biggest hesitations when we approved the big business plan back in the spring was that there was no commitment to an annual rollout of it. And I understand why we did that. But I think what we're seeing in this budget is real cuts to our service. I think I appreciate that some of the perhaps rider speed and coverage improvements are perhaps a bit of a distraction from the bigger moves that we need to make to actually realize our business plan. And that's not on staff, but I think we set out a business plan that helped us move away from student ridership as our sole source of ridership and to actually making transit a viable alternative for people to get out of their car. And really nothing in this budget gets us towards doing that. And so I have a few questions that I'd like to get a little bit of information on for December 3rd. Recognizing that it is a tough year. First question, and you might be able to answer this now. You spoke briefly to what our cost recovery ratio is doing. Could you maybe speak to that and how that ratio is trending with the service adjustments we've already made this year?
Through you, Chair, yes. So, Councillor, again, reminder, the Canadian Urban Transit Association sets a kind of generalized target for transit agencies at 35%. That's where we sit today. Through the last year, we had dropped from 37 down to 22% in various months as we went, and that was obviously causing tremendous concern, including the report that we brought forward at the end of Q1 where we made some significant adjustments. Look, our network, because we've got an LRT, our target for myself and our team is 40 cents, 40% cost recovery. We're under that now. And so we believe that this plan that we've put in front of you helps bring us back closer. So yeah, that's where we're at on cost recovery. Thank you.
Okay, so we're trending up, which is promising from where we were earlier this year. I think the two things that I'd like to understand more before budget day, the first is what we can do to really promote our existing routes and the really amazing services that we do provide. We have some routes that are 10-minute routes. We have a great LRT and we actually have a really amazing communications team on GRT. They get a lot of praise online. So let's leverage that and let's actually drive people to transit and let's talk about the great services that we have. So I'd like to understand more about what we could do with the existing budget in 26 to do that. The second thing I'd like to understand is what would be the one biggest move that we could make next year to make progress towards the business plan. So there's a lot of different things in the business plan that would help build non-student ridership, that would achieve a lot of the goals that we want to do, whether it's the frequent transit network or the Highway Express network. We're not making any progress on that in this. I will note that we are making great progress on the rural transit strategy, which is really amazing. But I think I have great concerns when we're not making any progress and that there's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy of cutting transit and losing riders if we don't keep investing. So I'd like us to keep that in mind as we go to budget day. And if I could get that information, that'd be great.
Through your chair, happy to answer those questions.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rabanich.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the update on this. I really wanted to follow up on Councillor Hunick's comments on the Mobility Plus program, because up until a year ago, it is one that I've used over the last 4 years for my late mom, and I came to appreciate, and I know she used it even before that, as an older adult. And so I'm just I guess I'm trying to understand the thinking behind not doing any increases. And I understand, like, I'm big on affordability, so I'm glad to see that in a way. But the thinking behind not any increases for, you know, the majority of folks who are using transit and perhaps are working and so on, and those who are using the Mobility Plus taxi coupon and are on more, you know, often, not always, but often on more limited incomes. And so not seeing any increase for one group, and what essentially amounts to a 33% increase for another group that's highly vulnerable, just doesn't make I'm trying to understand and rationalize it. So I'm wondering if staff can provide some insight.
Through you, Chair, Councilor Urbanovich, great question. So just quickly on how this would impact a customer/resident. So a Mobility Plus customer riding on GRT in 2026 still does that for $3 a ride. And this council has invested and added capacity to that Mobility Plus service. And so what we're talking about with the taxi coupons are residents booking a taxi outside of GRT involvement. So that's a direct booking. And so really what we're doing there is that's a $60 value that a resident achieves. And we're saying we think now with the investments we've made on the Mobility Plus side that we could move that from $30 to $40. We're sensing a reduced need for that. Comments around affordability still hold. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess we can debate this later in the process. I do have a concern because I have a sense that need isn't being met still, and when it isn't being met, we're actually turning to folks to have to address their needs at a higher cost already, and now we want to increase it by 33%, when the vast majority of users are not seeing any adjustment. So I think this is something that maybe will require a further think through. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Spooner, for all your hard work and all the things you've done here. In terms of affordability, if we're trying to address all the things that Councillor Craig said, cutting the Grand River Transit services doesn't actually make sense. In looking for diversifying our ridership, I think we should be looking at seniors in terms of, we have a growing senior population who tend not to use public transit extensively, and we know that their need to use it will only increase. So two questions. One, have we pursued any new plans for residents to access the affordable transit program? Example, libraries.
Through you, Chair, Councillor Wolf, can I just ask to clarify, you're talking about the distribution of fare products, like where people would buy a pass?
Yes, and especially the affordable transit program, because I know you can go online, but very many seniors, many people low income don't necessarily have access to computers, and at this point, I know they have to show taxpayers, et cetera, to prove their income. So I think it would be more comfortable for people to fill in these papers with some guidance at something like a library, and more people would access that program. That's one thing.
Through you, Chair, yeah. So, Councillor Wolf, two quick ones. First one, let's talk affordable transit program. So, Councillor, you remember a few years back, we had pursued the affordable transit program as a way to income test discounts in transit. And so instead of doing group passes or discounts for various, groups in our society, we said, no, the group we are going to really focus our investment on are those who hit an income or don't hit an income threshold. Council, last year, well, this year that we're in right now, 2025, we will distribute $5.2 million in fare discounts through the Affordable Transit Program. And so I think we do that with tremendous care. But I would say, as I spoke earlier about cost recovery, that 5.2 included in our budget would push us over that 40%. Councillor Wolf, your question on how we distribute or how people buy fares. So one of the barriers to riding transit is first, where do I need to go? And second, how do I pay? And so this has been one of our major focuses. This year, we've added additional ticket vending machines at Boardwalk and Sports World. People can continue to use our customer service locations at Ainsley Terminal, at Strasbourg Garage, at Benton, just outside here. And those are available in person by phone as well. And with GRT Pay, we've added an additional payment option where folks now don't actually need to go anywhere or do anything. You just simply download the app and you're able to pay as you board the vehicle. So look, happy to explore. I think, Councillor Wolf, the first time we had this discussion was about Mobility Plus eligibility and expanding that to have some support at the library as we do at our customer service locations, but happy to look at how we can distribute fares through additional places. I know our transit partners across the province have various distribution deals, so happy to take a look. Thank you.
Okay, and my second question is, again, where you're going to cut personal customer less in-person customer traffic on Sundays and holidays due to new online and mobile fare payment options. I'm thinking that sometimes people just really need a person, and on a holiday, that may be the time someone tries to use with a family the service for the first time. And I do think that many people really need a person to talk to. And so I would be reluctant to see that service cut, for instance, on holidays where they're trying to go to the museum for the first time, or, we have improved by children under 12 are now free, but I think that we need service still and in-person service. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, just a quick response. So, Councillor, we have seen a reduced number of visits to our in-person locations, which is why this proposal is on the table. And just a reminder, the Service First call center is still up on Sundays and holidays, as well as the GRT Pay app, and our ticket vending machines are still up on Sundays and holidays. So appreciate the comments. Just wanted to add some context. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Gowing.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Spooner, do you know what the cost to the region is on the taxi coupon per ride, or is it vary?
Through you, Chair, Councillor Gowing, that would be varied by the amount of the trip cost. So again, at this point, somebody can buy $60 of value for $30, and we are proposing that they buy $60 of value for $40. So it would move it from half the cost to 2/3.
Okay, and follow up to that, the 130,000 annualized revenue, I'm assuming that is based on how it's currently being sold?
Through you, Chair, Councillor Gowing, that would be an increase of $130,000 above what is being generated today.
Okay, so we're using our projected numbers based on the usage of today. Okay. Looking at that, I don't know if that's the best way to do it, because I know when you increase on pricing, sales tend to come down. What I'm looking at is, and Councillor Hunick actually mentioned it, if I would rather sell something, 100 of something at $10 and like two things of $50 sort of deal. So I don't know if the 130,000 annualized is going to be the actual number. I know that we can only estimate on those things. Can you tell us what roughly the ridership is based on current numbers?
Through Chair, I don't have the number of rides taken through Taxi Coupon today. I'm happy to get it. What I would likely report back to you on is the number of books sold rather than the number of trips taken, but happy to do that.
Perfect. And if I can have, I do have a revenue question. I know you and I did a tour of the transit buildings and we had kind of a conversation. Can you tell me in the 2026 what type of other revenue generations that transit is looking into?
Yep, through you, Chair. Councillor Gowan, great question. And this is really part of the fare strategy that we're now building out. So look, some of the areas we've started to explore are around high school students and our ability to supplement the yellow bus and make sure that students have, high school students have free movement, not only to get to and from school, but also for employment or other activities after school. We know that we need to revisit our TravelWise program. So reminder, that is a program which employers opt into and immediately all of their employees receive a 15% discount on transit products. So we, the region of Waterloo as a corporation, are a member of that, but we think there's a different opportunity there to explore that and get a more fulsome partnership in which, almost like we have in UPass, where we now have a contractual relationship with our partners, we can talk about service, we can share numbers of students, in that case would be employees. Those are two of the places, as well as continuing to get products onto GRT Pay so that people don't have to travel anywhere to get them. They just have them simply in their hands. So those are a few of the strategies right now. But again, we're going to work on fares through the entirety of 2026. Thank you.
And we talked about possible advertisement for revenue generation as well. Has that gone anywhere, or is that going to be looked at in 2026 for the next year?
Yep, through you, Chair. Councillor, another great question. So we do have an existing contract with Pattison, the advertising company Pattison, and so they, as you know, put wraps on our buses and our bus shelters. We've been having discussions with them about expansion. I had brought one forward, I think it was 2 years ago, about the Ion, and the council did not support. We're continuing to look at opportunities with Pattison, but we do have a pretty healthy contract there, and we can grow and shrink that using buses and bus shelters, but largely based on their sales volume rather than our want to increase. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor James.
Hi, thank you. Through you, Chair. Thanks, Doug. I just have two questions, Chair Harris. Mobility Plus, the taxi coupon increase aligns with other transit agencies in cost recovery. Can you provide the comparison at some point before, final budget day, just to see this? I think that may help with kind of understanding, I think, if we're behind or what have you. But I'm also conscious of the affordability with this. The other thing, and Councillor Hunett kind of referenced this in her talking points, was around Lyft and Uber. So we know that there are other driving service agencies, essentially taxi services, that are happening, and they do not provide accessible vehicles. And I don't think, I know, when legislation, and we worked with Uber many, many years ago. I don't know if there was some sort of fee that was paid to the region as a result of not having accessible vehicles. Is there any way to look at, to understand that better? And if there are, we've got Uber, we've got Lyft, there's others that are popping up all of the time. They do not provide accessible vehicles. That puts the onus on the taxis, which we have partnerships with. And just like, where's that in recognition with some of the agreements we have, and opportunities potentially there to provide resources as a result of not being able to meet all of the needs of the residents in the area?
Through your, Chair. Councillor James, thank you for the question. I'm going to call a friend. Commissioner Regier has the answer to that one, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Harris. Yes, Council will recall that in the last cycle, we introduced an increase, or proposed an increase in the ride per ride fee for rideshare operations, and that fee is almost exclusively dedicated to the financing of additional accessible vehicles in the taxi fleet. Mr. Brubaker can provide additional detail on the specifics, but certainly we do charge a fee, and it is used to subsidize the development of accessible vehicles in the taxi fleet.
Yeah. So through you, Chair, Councillor James, there are two fees that are charged on a per ride basis to the app-based taxis, Uber and Lyft. The accessibility one, I believe, was increased by 3 cents per ride, and that fee is used then to subsidize the non-app-based taxi companies to provide the accessible taxis. There is another per ride fee that that they also pay that we have recently recommended to the Licensing and Hearings Committee to increase, and it's coming through in the fees and charges bylaw.
So with that, I know there are drivers, I guess, if they do it by license, popping up all of the time. There's a significant amount of revenue that Uber and Lyft and these companies are making. Is it possible to provide us with what that income, the number of what's been generated as a result? Because it would good to see that, especially when you have so many drivers popping up now, and that company's growing probably more than taxis are at this point in time. So it would be good to have some numbers around that.
Yeah, we can provide those numbers.
Councilor McCabe.
Thank you. And thank you to Councillor James, who asked most of my questions. I was going to go down the same path around what the fees are. I know we increased them a little bit, but like if there's room there to renegotiate that, because as Councillor James was just saying, they do generate a lot of revenue, not for any benefit to the region, but I also really worry about our own local taxi services, because they continue to be cannibalized by Lyft and Uber and those rideshare programs. And the more that people take those other programs, the less the less ability our local taxi, these are licensed, trained people who I think, people should prefer to take a taxi, like a local taxi like that, with the proper insurance and that in place. But they also have the benefit that they provide accessibility options for other people in our community. So I think we need to really think about how we support our own local taxi services. But so thanks for asking those questions. I just also wanted to ask in relation to the communications piece that I think Councillor Rodriguez brought up, when you're talking about trying to find ways to increase the fares. Personally, when I started riding the bus, that's when I was like, oh, this is way better than I expected, right? So we can advertise, of course, and things like that. But if there were, and I don't know how much this would cost, so I'm not expecting an answer, but just leave it with you that, the more that people experience it, I think the more that they will actually use it. So if I know you do serve, Dave Steffler is awesome with like seniors when they do ride the bus programs and stuff like that. But if there's some way to incorporate some of that, real life experience for whether it's kids, whether it's adults, whomever, because the more people get on the bus, the more they kind of go, oh yeah, this is actually quite a bit better than I ever expected. So if you could include that in your work, that would be great. I also just wanted to note that routes 9 and 13, because I do hear from people who are concerned about, an additional reduction in service, because we already reduced it last year. And so an additional reduction in service, these are not, sure, there's post-secondary students who use this. There's also high school students that I hear from regularly who use it, but there's also just regular people who are using it as well. These are not just, I don't want council to think these are just routes for students, for post-secondary students. And the more we continue to cut, the more it's just gonna become a self-fulfilling prophecy that the line will eventually just, I don't know, like no one's gonna take it, right? Because and I know you understand that, Commissioner Spooner, but I just don't think I don't see right now how I can support additional cuts to those routes because people are asking for more service out there. I know the numbers, the hard data probably don't show up that way, but again, as Councillor Rodriguez said, this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So just want people to know that's not just students, not that students aren't important, but it's not just post-secondary students using those routes. Thank you.
Councillor Sallin, and then over to Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I'm just curious on what the surplus reserve balance for rural transportation is right now. That would be from like the Kiwanis Transit surplus during COVID that was put into a reserve specifically for rural transportation.
Through your chair, Council will have to bring that one back.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Hunick.
Thank you, through the chair. Commissioner Spinner, I know that in previous years, GRT has done various bus wraps to highlight certain things like Pride and Every Child Matters. This year, I looked for those in the budget and couldn't find them. Are they there? Could you speak to those? And then I have a follow-up question.
Through you, Chair, yes. So Council, you remember about 2 years ago, we had this discussion. And so Councilor Hunick, how this works is bus wraps, the production of the vinyl is covered by GRT, and then the initiating department funds the artwork. And so if I give you an example, an easy one for Pride, GRT is the initiating department. And so we pay both, for that example, the artist and the production of the artwork and the installation. We do 4 bus wraps a year. This past year, we did Every Child Matters, Pride, Black History Month, and an anti-hate wrap. We have a few of those we can rotate in and out. And we do a number of other initiatives like a sticker on every bus for Remembrance Day and a few others. So there's a pretty comprehensive program. It is in GRT's budget, that production, but it's likely not, it's not a line. It would be included in another marketing line.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Spinner, for that. And thank you also for referencing the stickers on each bus for Remembrance Day. Wow, I think that's a great initiative, and I want that to continue, most certainly. I've heard from veterans in Waterloo that would like either the back of a bus covered for Remembrance Day or an entire bus covered for Remembrance Day. So I'm wondering if you can bring back the costing of that.
Through your chair, yes, happy to bring that back.
Thank you.
Councilor McCabe.
Thank you. I also just, I think, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but about the attempt we made or the consideration we gave a couple of years ago about wrapping the LRT with advertisement. My recollection was that we didn't go down that route because the initial drafts we saw were like blocking the blocking windows, and we were really pieces that people wouldn't be able to see out the windows, which obviously, you know, things can be done so the windows aren't blocked. Because I know that services and other like LRT trains and that in other communities, not in Canada because we have the best one, but in some other communities, particularly in the US, like they wrap them for advertisement purposes, you know, for things that are community events. You know, it could be about Oktoberfest, or it could be about, you know, Afro vibes, or it could be about like something that's happening, Jazz Fest, right? Like I'm not suggesting we go down that road because we're not going to charge local festivals to do this. But the point is they do advertising on it successfully. So I would personally like you to come back with what we think we might be able to generate in revenue, but make sure that it's accessible, that it's not blocking the windows.
Yeah, through your chair, Councilor McCabe, I had a slightly different interpretation that I'm happy to share, and that was that we felt as a horseshoe that the ION represented an iconic feature of the region and that we didn't want to wrap it in any way. Look, full disclosure, when we talk to our advertising partners, the train is the big fish. If we have the train in play for advertising, external or internal, there's a significant revenue opportunity there. I'm happy to bring back estimates on what that would look like. And just noting that we know from the experience of GO and TTC who do this on GO trains and streetcars, that you can achieve it with no window wraps or 50%. We can do a lot of different things, but that would be a significant revenue opportunity. So happy to bring that back. Thank you.
You have further?
I just wanted to say thank you, but it also is a good way for us to use it for our own purposes too, right? For getting, for the regular GRT process, trying to get more awareness about just get on the bus, get on the LRT, whatever. So thank you very much for bringing that back.
Chair Harris, if I may, just a quick one. Councillor McCabe, any of the advertising space that we provide to Pattison that is unused or unsold, we are allowed to use for regional purposes. So I often talk to Commissioner Regier about opportunities to promote the airport on the routes running out there and some other things. So we could use that for public health purposes, all sorts of different things we could use it for, but we have to first make it an asset for sale. Thank you.
Councillor Foxon.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I would just like to ask staff that every time we ask these little asks in and out here and there, that we also put a dollar figure with it, because I really want to stay at that 5%. But I do want to see the options and what it's going to cost. The smaller things, that's fine. So if we could have a list of these things that have been requested and what the dollar figure is for that, to try and maintain or see how close we're going to be to the 5%, or shall I say 4.94, was it? Thank you.
Okay, Chair Redmond.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I was really going to reflect on the comments that Commissioner Spooner made. And while windows were an issue, it was an outpouring from the community saying how iconic the Ion is, how representative it is of the region. And there was a lot of community pushback. I'm not saying that will consistently sort of stem the tide, but I think that was the compelling reason we didn't go to advertise on the trains.
Councillor Gowling.
Mine's just a quick comment on that. I think one of the things that I have always said is that if you are looking at an investment, and I say this at all levels of government, if you're looking at making an investment, I always want to know what the return is on that investment. So if I totally get the iconic feel for it, but if we can show the public that this is going to generate X amount of dollars if we wrap a train, and that's less money coming out of your pocket, I think we could sell that for sure.
Yeah, I do recall the debate. There's no further questions, but I actually have one, Mr. Spinner. So, last meeting, we discussed the significant revenue shortfall in GRT. And I know since then, I've had a lot of questions and emails from constituents just about our ability to, ramp up and down to reflect ridership, knowing that obviously, we're not going to get into the debate today about the knowledge that the region had with regards to the international student population and the ebb and flow and the dramatic cut of that. Some would suggest that we had an idea it was coming. To the extent and scale, likely not. But I guess just the question aside, maybe to help folks understand the ability for GRT to based on the ridership, eliminate costs or roll back service, or just kind of explain your ability to do that in the time frame it actually takes. I think it's just important for the people to understand from you. We just can't flick a switch and shut ground buses tomorrow. It takes time to plan and do that. And I just thought it'd be a great opportunity maybe to reiterate what it's like to do that in as short a period of time as you got. Because I am going to break for lunch after this answer.
Through your chair, I'll be very quick.
No, you can take your time.
So I think this is a really important question, Councillor Harrison, and thank you for asking it. So look, we maintain two different forecasts. We've got a long-range forecast that helps guide our capital program, so that helps us know when to replace buses or buy new buses. Reminder for council, we keep buses about 14 years on a life cycle with a major refurb in year 8. So that's where we start kind of on long-range projections. Then we get into more what I'll call kind of reactive or closer term. And so you'll remember this example from September of 2023, when I would share with you that anecdotally we knew the network was overloaded, but I didn't know how many riders were on it. And that's because we've got about a 2-week lag from when folks tap their cards to when we have all the data and we can consume it and really use it. And so effectively, if we need to do something next week, we're doing it based off feedback from our drivers and our transit operations center who are monitoring overcrowding and things like that. Once we've got the data, that tells us what we need to do in terms of ramping up or ramping down service. We've got a window prior to implementation of about 3 months, and that is when we finalize the service plan and we allow our operators to pick those shifts. And so I think it's an important activity. If you think about somebody living their lives, wanting to plan a vacation or a day with their children, our team does that booking about 2 months out, and then as we get closer, we do small refinements. But really, if you think about our ability to change service at any given point, we're about 3 months away. We change service 4 times a year, January, April, June, and September. And so those are our opportunities to do major adjustments. We obviously do minor adjustments in that time, but it is a bit of a lengthy process and a little less reactive than it could be. But again, it's to make sure that we're able to staff up and have the vehicles available.
Okay, thank you for that. Quickly, Councillor James.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. I know. I just had a question about the UPAS increase. When is the next contract or the negotiations? When is that process again?
Through you, Chair, I believe, and I can make sure that I get this one right, that we are lined up for all 3 of our post-secondary institutions to renegotiate in 2027. And so those will likely come with either just an extension or a referendum, but that I think we've got them all lined up on that timeline. Happy to confirm in my written responses.
Okay, and then just to follow up regarding the overall the business plan for GRT, do some of these changes reflect any of those that were mentioned, or kind of, basically it's a tough year, we're kind of holding off on some of those? How do these changes align?
Yeah, really good through you, Chair. Sorry, a really good question, Councillor James. So look, we haven't stepped off of the business plan. Sorry, Councillor James, I'm getting answers to your previous question. University of Waterloo and Conestoga College are up in 2027. Laurier is up in 2030. So there's your timelines. In terms of the business plan, yes. So we are implementing elements of the business plan. The township strategy was mentioned in the business plan. We know revenue diversification and our focus on that is included. So it's look, we're reducing some routes that we put a lot of investment into in 2023 in the international student boom, and we're pulling back on those routes. But everything else included in this plan today is the GRT business plan and is in support of what we are committed to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, colleagues, we are going to break for lunch now. We'll come back at roughly 12:20. Hopefully that'll provide everyone enough time to grab a bite and get ready to go. And we'll start in on the waste presentation following lunch. So 12:20, folks, we'll recess until then.